Hello and welcome back to Traumatic Tomes. This is a booktube channel, and today's topic is a whole bunch of books that I own that I'm going to be unhauling. Now, I buy a large amount of books monthly via used bookstores, mostly Goodwill. And that's not a very expensive habit, but I end up buying a lot more than I need. As many of you, probably all of you here on BookTube can understand. So there comes a time every week or month or so where I got to get rid of some books. So I've got 6 books here that we're going to talk about before I get rid of them. And I might do a giveaway for one of these books. But I'll make that decision in a few minutes. But I've read some of these books and I haven't read some of these books. So I'm just going to get right into it. With the first book, we got Caravans by James Michener. You know, James Michener, the American writer who writes all those books with the place names and they're this big. This book, Caravans, is not one of those, like, millennia spanning geographical beast novels. This is one of Michener's early works. I believe it's from 1963. And I've read this, but it follows the story of this American, like, Foreign Service officer or Department of State guy who goes to Afghanistan to look for a missing American woman. She was from, like, Pennsylvania or something, and she ran off with a Afghani guy, and then she disappeared into the wilderness. So the American government or the girl's parents want to try and find the woman. And this was an interesting book, I think, mainly for the setting. The setting is post-World War II Afghanistan, where I believe it's still the Kingdom of Afghanistan. And there's a neat, maybe not so much of a neat divide, but an interesting divide between kind of the secular Western encroachment in Afghanistan versus the more traditional Islamist, hierarchical structure that these two factions or ideologies are clashing in this mid-20th century country. And I think we all know where Afghanistan is now. Had some United States meddling in there, but the secular did not win out. But it's really interesting to read about the mid-20th century Afghanistan. As for the story itself, it's a little boring. I wasn't too captivated by this book, and I only got it originally because it was this cool little mass market paperback. I don't know if it's from 1963. It might have been a reprint or something, but I'm never going to reread this. If I ever do read Michener again, it will be one of those big books and not this one. So, yeah. First book of the Unhaul, Caravans by Michener. Next book, we got The Art of War, Sun Tzu, but this specific edition is edited by James Clavell, who is the author of Shogun. Now, I am unhauling this because I don't think it brings anything new to the table. I've already got The Art of War in an edition that has notes. And as far as I could tell, there's no notes from James Clavell. He just has a foreword. He has an 8-page foreword, and I don't even know if he translates this book or not. There's no mention of a translator anywhere. So I can only assume that he translated it if that's what edited by means. But other than the fact that James Clavell edited this, I don't know why I got it. I don't need 2 copies of The Art of War, so getting rid of this one. All right, here's another book that I read, 1931, Debt Crisis and the Rise of Hitler by Tobias Straumann. This is a more recent publication. I think it's from like 2019. Yeah, 2019. I read this in January this year. I covered it in my January wrap-up. But to summarize it quickly, it goes through the period between the end of World War I at the Treaty of Versailles and the rise of Hitler. And did he become chancellor in 1931 or 1933? One of those. But it goes through like economically how the German people got to where they were so that they would elect someone like Hitler to the chancellorship. And yes, Germany did deserve penalties after World War I, but the Allies kind of went about penalizing the Germans, which ultimately led to the penalization of the average civilian, not just the people who were warmongering or whatever, but all sorts of sanctions, and the German government had to take out a lot of loans, and then there's the famous periods of hyperinflation, and the Germans being a necessarily proud people to begin with, or too fond of being trodden upon. So there was a lot of different factors that went into Hitler's rise, and this book covers some of them, I think. I'm not a big World War II guy, so if I were to start reading about World War II, I wouldn't read this book. It was kind of in-depth when I needed a more broad overview. So for that reason, I won't reread it, at least in the next 30 years. So I'm just going to get rid of it. 1931 by Tobias Straumann. All right. This fourth book you've probably never heard of ever, and you've probably never heard of the author. I found this at Goodwill like last year. This is Write Clearly, Speak Effectively by M.L. Stein. A very slim book. And M.L. Stein, chairman of the Department of Journalism at New York University in like the 1960s or something. So like I said, I bought this last year, and I read it immediately because it was so small. It's only 94 pages. But as the title suggests, Write Clearly, Speak Effectively, it is a book on writing. And M.L. Stein, in his introduction or foreword, wherever it was, he says that it's not just for journalist writers. This advice is for all writers. And of course, he's just saying that to try and appeal to a wider audience. This book is only journalism tips. Like if you wanted to write something that wasn't a newspaper article, this won't help you. And also, the second part of the title, Speak Effectively, this is a book about writing. It's the only part of this book that addresses speaking, from what I can remember, is when Stein says, all these tips that I've talked about with writing, you can also use them in oral speech or something like that. It's just like a side comment. So I don't know why the title says speak effectively. But yeah, the only reason I kept this book after reading it is because, like, who has ever seen this book in the wild or heard of M.L. Stein? Not to knock the guy or anything, but I thought it was just a cool book to have. There's a weird, like, blood stain on this. It's red. I don't know if it's blood or what. I didn't do that. It wasn't me. But, yeah, I'm not going to end up keeping this even if it is a rare book. I don't even know if it's rare. But yeah, a book on journalism writing. All right, penultimate book. I did not read this. I bought Nelson by David Walder. This is a biography of Horatio Nelson, who was an admiral of the British Navy a while ago. He's one of, like, the national heroes of Britain, perhaps. And I bought this from Goodwill because it was a big, thick biography, and at the time I was trying to assemble a nice couple shelves of biographies. And this fit the bill. It's a nice, thickly constructed book. I don't know who David Walder is. I've never heard of him, but trying to see when it's from. Copyright 1978. So a nice older biography. The reason I'm unhauling this is just because I have so many biographies that I haven't read. And if I were to pick one to read, it would not be Horatio Nelson. As cool as a guy that he might have been, there's no interest there from me. So do email me if you're like a really big fan of Horatio Nelson and you just, like, have to have this biography and you want to read it. You can email me and ask for it, and I'll probably send it. But if you're not interested and you just want a book, like, I wouldn't ask. But yeah, Horatio Nelson, but big biography by David Walder. And the sixth and final book of the Unhaul will be A Voyage Long and Strange by Tony Horwitz. Subtitled, very wordily, On the Trail of Vikings, Conquistadors, Lost Colonists, and Other Adventurers in Early America. Now, I bought this book from Goodwill because it was in a similar vein to some other books I had, namely 1491 by Charles Mann, and another book called Before the Revolution with an author that I can't remember right now. But these are books about America, early America, like before modern times or before Columbus, before the American Revolution. This book is what was happening in America, like after Columbus, but before Jamestown. Well, before Plymouth Rock. So like a kind of maybe forgotten period in scholarship. I'm not sure like the exact weight of this particular region and time period. But I was looking at these three books and I saw that this book from Tony Horwitz, it's not just a nonfiction book. It's also like a hybrid travelogue where Horwitz kind of inserts himself with his own travels. That's why it's called A Voyage, and it says On the Trail, where Tony Horwitz kind of goes on the trail himself. Now, I haven't read this book, so I can't say if that would be a difference maker in my reading experience. Because usually, like, unless it's a travel memoir, you don't really want the author inserting themselves into a history book. But this is one that, if I were to read about the subject, it would be one of those other two books and not this one. So, for that reason, gonna unhaul A Voyage Long and Strange. And yeah. All right, so these are all the 6 books that I'm going to be unhauling soon. Probably send them straight back to Goodwill. But let me know if you've read any of these books. Let me know if I'm making a mistake on sending these away, or if I should actually be reading them ASAP. But yeah, thank you for watching. Email me or check out my Goodreads profile. Both linked in the description if you want to connect more. And other than that, have a good Sunday. I know we got a Columbus Day weekend here in the States, so a lot of people have Monday off. So enjoy that if you're participating or you're allowed to have a day off of work. But yeah, otherwise, see you guys later. Have a good day.